I retired in May 2022, sold my apartment complexes, and walked away from active investing completely. I had built the exact freedom I'd been chasing for over 20 years. And then I got bored. So I came back in 2025 to teach real estate investing. Not because I needed to, but because I kept watching so many people approach retirement completely unprepared. And I realized I had something most educators don't. I actually did the thing first, then I built the course, not the other way around. So if you're new here, I'm Jackie, and this is the story of how I went from a corporate burnout to financial freedom through real estate investing, and why I'm here showing you the roadmap I wish I had 23 years ago. It started when I was young, watching my stepfather. I remember asking him, "What do you do for a living?" And he said, "I'm a private investor." And I thought, I have no idea what that means. Over time, it started to make sense, though. He got up when he wanted, he checked on his investments and his properties. He had boats, he had cars, he traveled the world. And literally, he and my mom went all over the world. And the thing that struck me the most was he lived on his own terms. I watched it all and thought, that's it. That's the life I want. He taught me how to save, how to spend, and how to invest. And honestly, the gold was in the investment piece. He was an all cash guy. Pay for everything in cash. Don't accumulate debt for personal things. Don't carry a loan on your house. Pay it off. If you don't have to, don't get one. And you know what? For my personal life, that's rock solid advice. Having no debt is freeing. It removes stress. It gives you options. But I had to unlearn some of the same thinking when I started doing real estate investing. Cash is king for your personal life, and it can be king in real estate investing too. But more often than not, leverage is how you grow. And making that distinction was one of the first things I had to learn. So fast forward, I'm working, I'm climbing the corporate ladder, I'm doing everything right on paper, checking all the boxes, hitting my financial goals, but it just wasn't satisfying. I remember sitting there thinking, I don't want to be told what time I have to be to work, when I can leave, and everything in between. I was in sales, so there should have been freedom with it, but there just wasn't. The more I gave, the more that was expected. That's not life. That's a schedule someone else wrote for me. I wanted freedom to choose my own schedule. So in the late 90s and early 2000s, I started watching Carlton Sheets on TV. If you know, you know. He was the no money down guy. I can visualize him even when I start talking about him, but I soaked up everything he had to say. I listened to his commercials and ads over and over. And then I bought his course. And what I learned pretty quickly was that no money down is not really zero money. You still need to bring a down payment and closing costs to the table. Now, honestly, I've done transactions where I got more than I put down back at closing. And we'll get into that, but truly zero is fairly rare. What I also discovered is that maybe 1% of those who buy those courses actually do anything with them. I was definitely not going to be the other 99%. So at a lease options seminar in California that I attended, I ran across this guy who was assisting at the seminar. And he was an active investor who was just there because he could. He was basically financially free. He ended up actually doing an investing series with Robert Kiyosaki, from Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I asked him a lot of questions. I picked his brain and I said, what about doing this particular model, lease options, in Texas? And he said, look, I'm going to tell you this. He said, don't waste your time. Don't waste your time doing this on lease options. And trust me, I had paid a lot for this course. It was very expensive. I want to say back then, and this was like 2003 maybe, it was $3,000, which was a lot of money. But he said, concentrate on foreclosures. That's where we're headed. That's where it's going. It was a risk for him to say that, all things considered, but something resonated with me. So I followed his advice. He was right. He was absolutely correct. There are a lot of great educators out there, a lot of different strategies, and more than one way to apply them. And what matters is finding an approach that works best for where you are, for your situation and your style, and then actually doing something with it. So around the same time, I had a peer at work. We were at the same level running opposing sales divisions, and honestly, I didn't like him. He's from New York, he's brash, rude, you know, no patience for anyone that was stupid, or so he thought. So one day he came into my office and closed the door and he said, how do you do it? You get along with everyone. How? And I said, sort of with a smirk, I said, well, I'm not an asshole. That's how. He laughed, and then I told him, plus, this isn't even what I want to do. What I want to do is real estate investing. And he looked at me, he said, seriously? Oh my God, me too. So turns out he had been studying on his own, trying to get educated on real estate investing. And so we started meeting up, talking numbers, planning our corporate departures, and we became friends, really good friends, actually. So fast forward, I went on vacation for 2 weeks, actually, and I didn't go anywhere. But I had made up my mind I wasn't going back. I called my boss, who was my friend, on the way into the office, and I said, I'm planning to resign today. And she's like, oh, no, you're not. Get in here. Because we would walk across the street to Starbucks and get a coffee. And I said, oh, no, I'm telling you the truth. I have a red folder sitting in my chair or my seat beside me with my resignation letter inside. So we hung up and I came into the building, walked down the hall, and she could see me coming from her office. I had the red folder in my hand and her eyes got really wide like saucers. And she couldn't believe I was actually doing it. Now, here's the honest part. I left before I had replaced that income. That was risky, super risky, really ballsy, but also stupid. I do not recommend that to anyone. But my situation was unique, or so I thought. I was single. The market was starting to boom. I had a decent amount of money in savings. I had $20,000 in my checking account, and I told myself, if that checking account gets down to half and I haven't replaced what I spent, I will go back to work. I had left on good terms, so it was definitely an option, but I never had to. Shortly after, my partner left the company and he joined me full-time. So that's when we got to work for real. Our first deal was a foreclosure. We literally took the foreclosure list and drove from property to property, knocking on doors. We came across a woman who was 3 months behind, and she just seemed defeated. She felt defeated, out of options, and she felt hopeless. We worked with her, helped her figure out her situation, get moved, did all the paperwork, structured the deal, and then we made our first big mistake. We started renovations before we closed on the property. She came by one day, saw the improvements, and decided she wanted back in. She wanted her house back. And now we had a legal situation on our hands, an attorney to pay, and a deal that was falling apart. This was a major lesson learned the hard way. So lesson number 1, never, ever renovate a property you do not own, period. But we worked through it. We closed the deal, finished the renovation, and did a lot of work ourselves. And that taught us the next lesson. Lesson number 2, when you do the work yourself, it takes longer, a lot longer. And in this business, time is money and more deals. The faster you can turn a property, the more deals you can do. So we figured out real quickly that hiring professionals and letting them do the work was the only way we could grow. Our job is finding the deals and structuring them, not swinging hammers or laying tile. We sold that house and made well over 20% profit, even with the attorney fees. And we were very lucky. Full of lessons, but we made money. Here's the thing I want you to take away from my story, because the only thing that separates the people who build real freedom from the people who stay stuck is execution. I've been investing in real estate for 23 years now, and what I'm building with this channel and with my course is a step-by-step blueprint that I didn't have when I started. Back then, there were no guides. There was a course, it told you how, but it was no clear path from point A to point B. You figured it out by going from A to C to D to E and then back to B again, making a lot of mistakes and maybe eventually landing where you needed to be. I took all of those lessons, the hard ones, the expensive ones, the ones that required an attorney at 10 o'clock at night, and I built them into a system that will get you where you plan to be without all the detours. And here's the part that I think matters the most, especially if you're watching this channel for a reason. I actually crossed my own finish line in May of 2022. We sold all of our properties and our apartment complexes, and officially I retired. I did the thing I wanted the most, the very most. I built freedom, both physically and financially. And now I can show you how to build yours. Now, retired doesn't mean I walked away from everything. I'm still a passive investor, but I got bored. That's what happens when you're moving your whole life and then suddenly you stop. And when I looked around, I saw close friends who are quickly approaching retirement, and they aren't even ready, not even close. It's not like they're stupid or don't have good work ethic or even a good job. They do. They just don't have a formula to get them over the finish line. And that really got me. That's what pushed me to build this course. I wanted to give people what I had spent 23 years figuring out in a format that actually gets them from where they are to where they want to be. So if you're here because retirement is closer than it feels comfortable admitting, or even because you know real estate investing is the answer, but you don't know where to start, this channel and this course were built for exactly that. I'm Jackie, and this is Live Well, Retire Better, and I'm glad you're here. If you're ready and you want to go deeper, the link to my course is in the comments and the description below. So subscribe, stick around, and let's get to work. Thank you for watching.